exist. If one mid-level official signature is required to get that process pushed through, then that person could feel incredibly empowered at that point and demand all kinds of perks in order for his or her signature to be placed. So cutting through that bureaucracy, streamlining our government is a key issue. Some of the things, for example, we have a very heavy paper-oriented government right now. Our government offices are not connected through networks, through the internet. Our tendering process is still very old-fashioned and not very transparent. We're trying to have more of an e-governance approach to these issues. We're trying to connect all of our government offices together through the internet, and when that's on one hand to make the bureaucracy a lot quicker, make it more transparent, give a lot of people more access to see the paper flow. At the same time, when we make our tendering process more public, we give the citizens, an average citizen can be able to log in and see what projects are being tendered. An average citizen can go and look in to see the selection process of who's being awarded these contracts, and then can follow up on the development of these projects. So there are some things that we can do that are more simple than others. But the obstacles, I would say, one is the bureaucracy, the existing bureaucracy that we have. We have an incredibly over-bloated civil servant workforce, where the majority of our budget actually gets spent on the salaries of civil servants, which is crippling our own government's ability to actually effectively deliver better services. Offloading some of these people into the private sector, making our government smaller, is a priority of this incoming cabinet. But also moving beyond the mindset, this sense of entitlement that somebody that may have been a Peshmerga warrior, that feels that he liberated Kurdistan from tyranny, and the sense of entitlement that may come with, oh, well, I liberated Kurdistan, so I am entitled to X, I am entitled to Y. These are challenges, undoubtedly, that we have to face. But I think as we're developing a more technocratic society, as we're having people graduate from universities or people coming back from the diaspora to serve in low, mid, and senior level positions in government, as we begin to be more integrated with the outside world, partnering with friends in PwC and others, working with the World Bank and the US government, we can begin to see where the obstacles really lie, find a ways around them, try to resolve them. It is going to be a multi-year endeavor, but I think knowing the problem is half of the problem. When before we may have turned a blind eye to it, we can't do that anymore. People won't let us do that anymore. But now we know what the problem is. We have a much better way of finding a remedy to address that problem.
Final question is one minute here.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions. My first question is, you said that the recent Kurdish elections were more about domestic issues, but we know that there is an opposition right now in the parliament. Do you see any role for that opposition in contributing to formulating the Kurdish policy vis-a-vis Baghdad, or do you think that the Kurdish policy will still be formed by the two old political parties? And my other question is about the constitution of the Kurdistan region. You know that there was a draft and a referendum was supposed to be held, but it wasn't. Is the KRG or the Kurdish leadership going to push ahead with that draft? And if yes, is it going to be the current draft without any changes? Thank you.
Thank you. Two excellent questions. Undoubtedly, the opposition will be part of the policy formulation process in the system that we have in Kurdistan. It is not a winner-take-all system. They will be part of the process, and you know, I mean, being part of some of the campaigning, the opposition groups were actually quite critical of the so-called two Kurdish established parties for not doing enough to get Kirkuk back quickly enough, or not doing enough on getting the oil revenue sharing law issue addressed. So it would be interesting to see if they take a more hardline position than the government, or take a different approach. I think that's something that will ultimately play out as the blocs kind of settle and work within the parliamentary structure. But no doubt that they will have a role in the policy formulation process. And it's unclear yet as to whether or not these groups will run independently of the two main Kurdish parties in the national elections, whether they'll run on their own or whether they'll try to unify a Kurdish list for the Baghdad elections. That's not clear yet, and that could also play a role in how Kurdish views are to be relayed to Baghdad in the future. And as for the constitution of the Kurdistan region, I'm certain that the next parliament of the Kurdistan region will take this issue up. Probably one of the first few things that it takes up once it forms and begins to work, because the Iraqi constitution, the federal constitution, calls for regions to be governed by their own constitutions, as you have in the United States as well. So I think this is something that is healthy for the region. We need to have a constitution that governs the regions, that laws are bound by that particular constitution. Because right now we're actually operating on a series of executive orders that go back to '92, and it is not the most effective way of delivering, of governing. So I think this is something that will, it's a natural development, urging people not to read too much into it. This is not another, not those Kurds again showing how different they are to the rest of the country. It's perfectly normal and natural for the Kurdistan region to have its own constitution. The constitution is in line with the federal constitution of Iraq, and in fact it opens up by saying that it defines the Kurdistan region as a region within Iraq. Whether or not it'll be amended or tinkered with or words changed here or there, I think again that'll be left to the new parliament of the Kurdistan region to present, negotiate, ultimately agree on, and get ratified through a legal mechanism.
Well, that's all we have time for. So thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.